This week, it was a hard week because we saw just pure evil. People looking for a motive. You're not going to find a motive besides just there's evil in our world. And this is why the purpose of Radius Church is to move out in ever-widening circles, to change the world around us by showing the love of Jesus in a tangible way. That's it. It's not that complicated. It is very messy. It is difficult at times, but it is straightforward. We're going to show love to anybody that walks in these doors, and we're going to, more importantly, and this is our passion, me and Amanda's passion for you, is that you will move back out these doors and show tangible love to your neighbor, to your neighborhood, to your family first, to your own kids. And that's kind of the purpose of today's talk, is we're moving through our series called Home Fires. Before I go there, I've got a couple announcements I want to give you. First of all, a food truck. Noah, raise your hand. Noah needs, if you know what, if you don't know it, just go ahead and give Noah a huge round of applause, all right? Noah would like to get to know you, not in front of everybody. You don't like being pointed out. But we have, he runs our food truck and does it, him and Kim tirelessly go out and serve. We had an event yesterday. We have 6 more events this month. That's a lot. A lot of great. Went to a couple churches we're going to. We're at a couple of festivals. And so we have a list of people who are interested in serving. We put that out there. You say, I want to be involved in working on a food truck. I've never got a chance to do that. Afterwards today, at that table, Noah's going to be standing there. Come see him. Say, man, I don't know if I'm available during the times you have, but put me on the list. I want to know what's up with our food truck so we can serve. And so that's one way. Also, if you guys know, in every lunch we give, we sell for the food truck. And if you don't know, every sandwich we sell, we give a meal away. And we kind of make it kind of a reminiscent of mom, with a little peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a little sack lunch for you with a little note. And so we put handwritten love notes, not love notes, that'd be really weird, right? I don't know who you are, but you're telling me you love me, all right? Little notes, just affirmation. So those are handwritten. And so we're asking, we're going to have some notes over there at the end as well. And I encourage you, man, we'll have a little cheat sheet, some little phrases or what you want to say. So you say, I don't know what to say. You have little notes to write out. We're asking everybody to write 5 to 10 of them. That'd be great. If a lot of us got together and wrote 5 to 10, we'll have some pens over there, have notes. It'll supply us as we move into October. So good stuff? All right. Next is partnership. We are at Radius, we call it partnership instead of membership, and really it's intentional because it's all about partnering together with something that we want to connect with each other. That it isn't just some kind of thing you get on and you're just there and it's ambiguous, why do I go and what's it about? But partnership for us is an opportunity for people to kind of link arms in a tangible way, saying, hey, I believe in the mission, the direction of this church, and I'm willing to kind of link arms in a tangible way. And so that is going to be coming up next Sunday at 9:15. Now you say, man, I don't know if I'm there yet, all right? I don't know if I want to take that next step. You can come and explore. There's no pressure techniques. There's no trying to sell you anything. We just want to tell you who we are, a little bit more about why we do what we do, a little bit more of the history. So breakfast will be served next Sunday at 9:15. Come join us, hear about Radius, and if by the end or already know now, then you can sign up to become a partner. And we will ask you one thing so we can make sure you have enough food, all right? There is a sign up called radchurch.com. We always partnership, all right? There you go. /partnership. Like Blake, I signed up at .partnership, and I don't know where it took me, all right? /partnership.
You get nothing.
You don't get anything. This church is falling apart at the seams, all right? So anyway, man, we're so excited. As I had to announce last week when it was built up that Amanda was speaking last week, and I felt like, oh man, they're going to be really disappointed that I'm the only one. This week, me and Amanda are tag teaming together. We're talking today. Yeah, we're excited about that. So if you don't like me, you got Amanda, so that'll be good.
We can't understand you.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if you saw up here, we've been married for how many years now? 18? 18 years. I knew that. It was just It was a joke. Oh my gosh. She has this. I can look at her and know what she's trying to tell me. And I look back at her and I'm mumbling. Am I mumbling?
Yes, you were.
I'm going to slow down.
No,
all right.
You were speeding.
I was speeding too much. All right. So we are in our series on home fires. And the whole idea is how to keep warmth in our relationships. Because one of our core values at Radius is relationships are the fiber of who we are. Because really at the core of our faith is about relationship. When they asked Jesus, what is the most important commandment, right? Okay, there's a list of them. There's like 600 or so Old Testament commandments. What is the most important one, Jesus? Trying to trip him up because which one's he going to pick? He comes in a way he always does, in such a brilliant way, and says, let me tell you, the first command is this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. And I think they're thinking that's the period. But then he says, but there's a second one that's equal to the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. The very core of our faith, and it's not necessarily a religious practice, but our faith is an invitation for relationship. That God wants to have a relationship with us. And what that entails is first with him and then with others. And Home Fires, this series, we started it last week, we go through the rest of October, is really focusing on how we have healthy relationships with the people around us. And although this series really spans out across any kind of relationship, friend, co-worker, we're in the context of family and marriage. But before you turn you off and say, I'm not married or I don't have kids, it's not for me, we can all learn from having healthy relationships, because our goal in this series is how do we keep the warmth in our relationships? How do we keep those home fires burning? You know, this time of the year, although the day does not feel like it, it is what we call fall in Florida, all right? And I think, has it started officially yet? I think it has. I don't know. You're like, really?
Yes.
That one day in December, like, there's fall, all right? And so, but I know like me, like as soon as we hear fall, we get the colors out and everything to sell, all the stores are selling, we're like, we're going to have a fire pit. All right? And we suffer through fire pits in Florida, right? We're like, we're going to have this fire pit. I don't care, it's 95 degrees. It's going to be cold. And imagine it'll happen. And so, we know one thing about fire pits, besides no matter where you're sitting, the smoke's always going to follow you. The other thing we learn about fire pits is that we always must maintain them. We put a good burning fire together, but if we don't tend to it, if we don't make it something we constantly work on, then that fire will dwindle and die away. And so it is with our relationships. It is a constant tending. When we begin a relationship with our spouse, it is not something we're good, everything else is great, you don't have to worry about it from now on. It is a constant tending to. And what we're going to speak of the next 2 weeks are about having expectations and dealing with disappointments in our relationships. Today is expectations.
Oh.
It's you.
Nice look.
You like
glance.
that?
I got it. I was reading, there's a lot of quotes that pretty much say the same thing. And the originator I saw was probably Alexander Pope. And he basically, I'm summarizing, he says, if you don't have expectations, then you won't have disappointments. And, that's an interesting statement. It's pretty cynical. I think we've all probably had a pretty cynical week, so we can all be like, yeah, that's true. But the reality is, I even walk into my friendships with some level of expectation. If I'm a friend of you, I expect you not to hit me. I know, it's a high expectation. I expect I might even go further and say, I expect you to be nice to me, right? And that might be unspoken, but the truth is we do not relate to each other without some level of expectation. It's why we walk into a store and we're disappointed when they're rude to us, because we had an expectation that we were a customer and there was going to be some level of politeness given to us. And so today when we talk about expectation, understand that all of your relationships, you have expectations. Expectations are placed on you as well as you're giving those expectations. And I think it's kind of intrinsic that those relationships have expectations, but the cool thing is when we go to the Bible, we see the same pattern in Scripture, because all of our relationships are based on the Scripture, right? So in the Bible, Jesus says very clearly what he wants of us. It's actually very clear. And he started off, follow me, with the disciples, right? He was pretty much starting off with expectations. Those expectations are communicated throughout Scriptures. I wanted to go to an Old Testament passage, Micah 6:8, if we have it. Oh, awesome. Okay. Know, O people, the Lord has told you what is good. Okay, look at this in Micah, so Old Testament. And this is what he requires of you: to do what is right, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. The point of putting that verse up is for us to understand that there's a pattern in Scripture where God communicates his expectations with us. So as we walk into a talk about expectations, we're following what God does with us. When you have a relationship with somebody else, you can only use that pattern. So you're going to be asked to communicate what you expect. And I think the hardest thing is that a lot of broken relationships, and not just marriages, though that, of course, is one of them, but a lot of relationships are broken because expectations are not communicated. I'm kind of going to go right into, I did want to say, it's interesting because not only did Jesus place the expectation on his disciples of follow me, but he continues that, and not just telling them to love God and love others, but his expectations go so far as to let them know that the world is going to hate them because it's hated him, that there's going to be death and persecution. I mean, imagine putting that level of expectation on his followers, but he did that. And so I kind of wanted to, actually, I think it's you, right? I was going to tell a story, but I'll get to that in just a second.
Yeah, it really,
very smooth.
Yeah,
right there.
It's just like our marriage, all right? So it's perfect, all right?
And that's what I was going to say. You know, we're up here, and this is, it's okay, stand up. This is not like Blake and I know everything about marriage and we're pretending that we've got everything together. We feel like this is a gut check. This is a kick your tires moment. That's what this message is. Nor do we, you know, when you go to a doctor and you get a checkup, when there's a problem, they send you to a specialist. So here's a checkup in your relationships. This is a day for you to stop and analyze and take a second. But you may find that there's some specialists you need to see, and that's not us. Unfortunately, we're about your soul health, and your spirituality has a lot to do with how your relationships are. Love God, love people. So how are we doing at that? But yeah, so that's it. I'm done.
That was good. Clear expectations. You're welcome. Communication. All right. Clear expectations are a part of any healthy relationship. And we're going to talk, next few minutes, we're going to break down some things that sabotage our healthy relationship with our spouse, our friend, our coworker. And we're going to look at 3 ways we don't meet expectations. Sometimes there's unrealistic expectations, things that really there's no way that other person can ever meet this expectation you have. Unrealistic, there's also unspoken, and there's unmet. And those 3 are going to be kind of, if you're writing down a little outline, writing notes, these are the 3 areas we're going to talk about for the next few minutes, looking at these 3 and how they sabotage our relationship around us. And the first one is unrealistic.
And I think unrealistic right off the bat, we start thinking about, you know, if you're a woman like me and you're ever been in a place in your marriage where it's not all that you've wanted it to be, then you go to a wedding and you see them standing up there saying their lines that they say in your mind. There's a myriad of things that race through your mind. Because we know once we've walked the road of marriage for even a year, we understand that happily ever after is an expectation that it may have been unrealistic. And so as we step into a world of unrealistic expectations, I kind of want you to have that mentality that everything's going to be perfect, that he or her, he or she, is going to understand everything you need and be able to meet that in a relationship is unrealistic. So what does unrealistic look like? And it immediately brought a story to my mind that isn't marriage. So, you know, that's good. We're going to talk about other relationships as well because we have expectations in all things. I grew up with a mother who was phenomenal. She has passed away, so I'm going to speak about her in the past tense. But she was a phenomenal mom. She raised 6 kids. I'm the last of 6, so she, you know, hats off, you know. I mean, I have 2, and there's so many times I'm like, how did mom do this, you know? But my mom was not super communicative. I would say I grew up in a family that was not super communicative, though you would not necessarily know that by my nature. That was definitely the parents I was given. And so my mom was not good at communicating affirmation. She was not good at that. And so all my life, you know, I was seeking her to affirm me and say, wow, Amanda, that's wonderful. You know, I made very good grades and I did not ever receive any clap on the back. It was just, yeah, good. Very expected. any of my extracurriculars, if there was any excellence to be had, there was very little affirmation. So what happened, I was like 24, 25, and you know how you don't get it when you're young, that you're seeking this affirmation per se? So as age happens, you continue on a journey with your relationships, and I was home with a friend. Her name is Tammy. And my friend Tammy was saying to my mom, like, wow, did you know Amanda wrote this play, and she, produced it and directed it, and she's going on and on about it. And my mom is just sitting there, looking at her. And then it starts getting awkward because, Tammy's expecting some sort of response, and my mom is not giving her that response, so then it gets awkward for me because I don't know what to say. And all of a sudden my mom says, I promise, swear, she looks at the piano that's sitting beside, and she goes, she took piano lessons for 9 years, doesn't play. That's what she said. So my friend is like flummoxed. She's like, doesn't know what to do. I kind of think it's funny because this is like my mom's constant thing with wanting me to play the piano desperately, and so I'm like kind of find it humorous. But I mean, obviously, you're all sitting here and you understand there's a sad point there. I had a moment. So we leave from that situation. Tammy is just like, because she's my friend, she loves me, and she's like, what in the world, I'm like, whatever, this is life. I came to a point at home where I really had to take that to the Lord and like analyze that, because you're like 25, you're not 14 anymore, you don't cry in your room, you're like, okay, let's really process this. And I realized I had set an expectation a long time ago on my mom. I had set an expectation. Now, she's 65 at that point. She had me when she was like almost 40. So she's 65, I'm like 25. And I keep saying, why are you not affirming me with your words? Why are you not affirming me with your words? But realistically, I was also part of this relationship. And I was going to have to learn to receive the affirmation because my mom was a very loving person, and she did affirm me. She never affirmed me with her words. And so I had to learn. So one thing with unrealistic expectation, I don't think that was an unrealistic expectation, by the way, to ask for that. But there came a point when I realized I wasn't going to get it. And so what do? Because that's a relationship that I valued. It was my mother. So what am I going to do with that? So I would say it's like when Blake was talking about broadband earlier. I had to broaden my reception. How am I going to receive affirmation? I'm going to have to look in other spaces. I needed it one way. Mother wasn't willing, understood, wasn't having the tools to give it to me in that way. So what do? Am I going to trash that relationship? Well, see, we have that even in our friendships. We have that in our marriages. Do you get rid of a relationship? Or is it reasonable to say, within communication, that sometimes we have to broaden how we receive? So that's one, unrealistic. The second kind of principle I really want you to process with unrealistic is, I don't want you to think, and I think it's Galatians 6, the kids right now in Rad Kids are learning about the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, gentleness, kindness. Last week was patience. That's a fun one. Yay. And all these fruits of the Spirit, I have a need for those in my life, right? And as a young woman, I may think, this is me personally, I'm not talking all young women, but me personally, I may think that Blake needed to be the person to give me that love, that peace, that gentleness, that kindness, that patience. But what I had to understand is I was looking for the infinite within the finite. I was looking, could Blake give me love? Absolutely, he does regularly. But it is a limited version. When the Bible says that our marriage is like Jesus and the church, it's a reflection of that. It is a shadow of what it can be with God. It is not the whole picture. It is a reflection. Can Blake give me peace? Absolutely. But if I am looking for Blake to give me my soul peace, He can never do that. And that becomes an unrealistic expectation within a marriage. If I am not so healthy and I walk into a marriage, I can guarantee you, they call it codependence. That's what they call it. Because what that means is, I need Blake to fill something he was never designed to fill. And so I'm looking for the unlimited, the limitless. You know, when Jesus was at the well with the woman, right? He said, you've been looking for the limitless. That's what he was basically saying. You've been looking for the infinite within the finite. And I'm here to say, I'm the infinite. Come and drink of this water. There's no end. You see, if we come to any of our relationships and we're looking for the unlimited, we're looking for the streams of water that never cease, we're looking for a well that never runs dry, they can never do that. They are the imperfect, and we are looking for perfection. And I think that the third principle is that there's also a perfection and an imperfection. I can ask something of Blake. I can ask him to never blow up at me, ever. You know, never. I never, ever want to see you angry. I just can't deal with it. Okay? My unrealistic expectation is that I'm expecting perfection from an imperfect being. You see, this is why relationships without the solid foundation of having a good, soul, healthy walk with God is so much more challenging. Because if I'm not good with God, I need Blake to do a lot more for me. And that's a problem. He can't ever do that. And that creates, because men naturally, and this is a general statement, I'm going to say, I don't like generalities, but I'm going to say this generally. Men in general want women to be happy. And so I'm never going to be happy with him. I can't be happy with him if I am asking him to do what only God can do. And so that is an unrealistic expectation. And unfortunately, if we aren't clear right from the beginning, and that's why when Blake does a wedding, he is very clear. You get closer to God, you get closer to each other. And the reason that triangle, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's like a triangle, person, God. As you get closer to God, the triangle gets tighter and closer and smaller, and you're closer together. The reason that works is because as my soul is healthy, my unrealistic expectations diminish. And I see him for what he can do and what he will do and what he's able to do.
Amen, all right? I think we get done with that one right there. Follow up. So not only do we have unrealistic, we also have unspoken, ones that we maybe don't even know we have, or we don't know how to communicate to our friend or to our spouse. And so a lot of times we talk about communication, and as Amanda said earlier, Jesus, one thing he was good at, he was clear at communicating, here's what it looks like to follow me, here's what it's going to take, here's what I'm asking of you. He was very clear from the get-go. He didn't trick you into it like, hey, it's all going to be like free food, and then at the end, oh, by the way, you might have to die. And he said from the beginning, you're going to follow me, it's going to be hard, it's not going to be easy, it's going to be difficult. But if you persevere, you stay, you will see the reward out of it. He was clear in communicating. And in our lives, we have to be clear communication. That's the key. If we have any marriage counseling, if you've ever been to marriage counseling, and one thing that we talk about in premarital and in our own lives is communication is key to healthy relationship. If you aren't able to communicate to the other person how you feel, what's going on, you're going to have a really hard time navigating and really having that kind of a healthy relationship. Jesus was clear. That's why it says in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21, I don't know if we have it up on the screen, but it says this, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. And there's truth in that. And I love it. It's not necessarily all the way negative, but it says there is power in the old translation. There is power of life and death in the tongue. And those who eat of its fruit prosper. Another translation version. And it says this, that there is power in what we speak. There is life held in how we talk. And if we understand that, we can reap the benefits of it. And here's the truth of that then. my communication with my spouse, my friend, my coworker, my boss, I hold the power of life and death of that relationship with me and how I'm able to communicate my needs and my desires and my frustrations. And so we wanted to just break down a couple of tools, things that here's how we can have healthy communication. First one is not the blame game, all right? Not the blame game. This whole preparing for this message was very convicting. I'm just going to put that out there, and I don't want to talk on this stuff. All right? Not the blame game. Communicating blame-free. The idea is, purpose of communication is not to figure out who is wrong, but to invite people into figuring out what the solution is going to be. It's not assigning blame, but finding the solution. Because when I decide, I get in a place where I'm going to set my defenses up, I'm going to figure out who's wrong, and it surely can't be me. It has to be Amanda somehow, and I'm going to find a way to blame. What I immediately do is when I go from that point of communication, I immediately set up a defense. It's now a defense, right? But when I come from, I'm not here to blame, I am here to find solution, it's not setting up a defense, it's inviting in for collaboration. Okay, we're not going to decide it's your fault or it's my fault or it's you or it's your family or my family. No, here is the need. Here's how we communicate it. We shouldn't be using the words like you did, you didn't, you always, you never, or because of you or because of your parents or because of your, right? These situations set the conversation not to do what a communication is supposed to do, which is to find solution, but to draw battle lines. And so we must not do the blame game.
And I would say also, it sets you up to be a victim when you say, I feel like this because you. You just took your own power away. That's what you did. You set yourself up into a victim place. You feel this way, period.
Yep.
I don't need to place that upon you.
Yeah. You're not a victim. You're a partner. Now, there are situations, and when there are situations where there's physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, we're not talking about that. We're talking about in everyday frustrations and arguments, and major and minor. We don't need to come from a place of a victim. We need to come to the place as a partner. And we're here for the same goal. It's huge. Yeah. Communication. Not only that, but there's also how we communicate is general versus specific.
Yeah, I think when we use general, that tends to attack character and core beliefs. Like, I need you to be neater. Okay. That speaks to you're not neat and you need to fix yourself. Where if I can get more specific in my communication, this is a great tool. I'm serious. Like right now, you need to think about this in your tool belt with your boss. You need to think about this in your tool belt with your coworkers, with your significant other, with your mom, sisters. Instead of, I want you to be neater, I wrote these down because I thought this was good. It would be better to communicate specific, observable actions. Like, I would really like it if you put your dirty dishes away. Period. Or, I would really like it if you put your shoes away. Period. Instead of, I want you to be less critical of me, because that says you are critical. Fix you. Okay? What if I say specifically, hey, I would appreciate it if you didn't make jokes about me being out of work in front of people. Not only am I not attacking character at that point, but we can actually measure progress. Because how do I measure a progress of, are you less critical of me? How do I, yes, you've been good at that. No, you haven't been good at that. Where if I can say, okay, specifically I asked you to do this, that is measurable. That's a measurable thing. I want you to be more loving. Okay. That's pretty general, right? What if we could specifically say, hey, when I come home from work, it would mean a lot to me if you would give me a kiss and ask me how my day was. See, I do this a lot. I can pinpoint the general because that's how my mind works. In general, you got a problem, right? But specifically helps us to move towards solution. Another one, men, you're going to like this one now. I wish you were up for sex more often. Specifically, I know we're crazy busy, but I'd like us to commit to trying to have sex at least once a week, even if that means we have to schedule it. You see, there's a specific, measurable thing that I can make it a goal. It's attainable, where in general I can get overwhelmed with these large character issues. Another one, you need to be less clingy. Specifically, I need to hang out with my friends at least once a month. See how that's different and measurable and done.
That's good. That's good. Now, another one is this is how to communicate tools. It's not axis versus allies, right? Again, I felt so much because I don't know about all guys, but I know generally when I speak and have a point, I want to get something across, I look at it as winning and losing, right? I've got to get my point across. And so if she has a counterpoint that beats my point, then I should see the point to her. Like, well, you're right there. I can't argue that one, right? But that's not the way we need to communicate. Not axis versus allies. It's not me versus Amanda. We're on the same team. In fact, that's something we say to each other. We say to our kids when we're going in conflict. Hey, you need to remember, we're on the same team. It's not versus. But how do we know it's versus? Here are some clear ways you look at communication as versus. First of all, it is full of interruptions. Right? You're always like, I'm gonna disrupt this right now. She starts talking or I start talking and all of a sudden, boom, get in the middle of the conversation. But like, I wasn't even done talking. And when that also happens, it is also not only interruptions, but it's preparing for the counter strike. I'm so guilty so many times in my life. When Amanda's talking, I'm not listening to what she's saying. I just got enough of what she's saying, so I'm preparing my artillery for the counter strike. Truth, right? Man, that is a dangerous, that is an unhealthy way to communicate. My conversation with Amanda needs to be, I'm not me versus her, not her point of view versus my point of view, or her problem versus my problem. We are together, a couple. God has brought us together. We are committed to this, and so we're on the same team. So it's not about me trying to trump her, or try to interrupt her, or try to come with my next counterpoint that trumps her side, all right? It's not about that. Not only is it not about that, it's not keeping a tally sheet. All right, well, maybe some of you pull out the actually blackboard and start writing down, all right, you won that argument, I got that one last week, and well, I got 5 of the week, I must be better than you, all right? Marriage is your problem, all right? So, no, it's not keeping tally sheets, it's not preparing your counter-strike, it's not interrupting. When we live this way in conversations with our spouse, with our friends, with our kids, with our boss, we are looking at it from us versus them, and that never succeeds because the purpose of communication is coming to an understanding and fixing this problem that is involved. And so what happens is it becomes a conquest instead of a compromise. Thank you. Not a conquest. It's not about me winning or losing or about making my point. It's about a compromise. How do we come together? We become an adversary instead of an advocate. Look, here's the truth, man. God placed me and Amanda together. God placed a spouse, your friends, your coworkers in your life for a reason. They're meant to be there to go beside. The Bible says, as a friend, as iron sharpens iron, so does a friend. God's placed people in your life, and you must see them, no matter how sometimes they kind of speaks directly to you, that they are there to be beside you. And we're not enemies.
And that makes me think of Ephesians 6, where it says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And to remember,
Even in situations at work with our bosses, that we are not against them.
No.
That there are enemies about, but it is not that person.
And what I've learned in my life, when I come, and there's times in my marriage, that when I'm talking with Amanda and we're having a disagreement,
Once a year, baby. Once a year.
it's at most. We haven't had this one this year yet. No. We're lying, Lord, I'm sorry. All right. That when I come from a versus, all right, when I get there, there's 2 underlying things in my life. Pride or guilt. When I make it me versus her, or I start kind of setting my boundaries up, it's either pride. I don't like how she's saying it. I don't think she's right. Nobody's going to tell me. Oh, I got it figured out and she's got it wrong. Pride, or the second's guilt. I know I'm wrong. I know this isn't healthy. And when she addresses it, instead of me saying, you're right, this is pride and guilt sabotage my ability to have healthy communication. Look, when God said, here's the purpose, I'm going to go back to the beginning. Here's the purpose of what I want for every person to have a healthy soul. Is love God, their heart, soul, and mind. And second, as equal to or a link to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And if you can't love the person that's living with you or right beside you or in your neighborhood, man, we got to start that. This is where healthy souls come from.
And the fourth kind of principle under unspoken expectations is it's really powerful to me, and because I kind of tend to do this, and that is we have to appreciate the differences. Because when I speak an expectation, I have to understand that that does not devalue when they meet that expectation. Anybody else like that? Like I feel like, hey, I would like you to be more romantic. And so then the next day he brings flowers and I'm like, yeah, I just told you that yesterday. Like I've completely devalued. And so the reason we have to communicate is because we're different. And if I embrace those differences, if I value those differences, then I have to understand that's why we're having to communicate the expectations. And I cannot devalue when that's the reason they perform for that expectation. Does that make sense? And I know that's a funny thing, but hey, that's true in my life. If I have had to communicate, I feel like, well, I've had to communicate that. That's not even sincere now. It's not even real. And see, what I've done is I've actually said, you should be like me, right? Why aren't you like me? Why doesn't that naturally come to your mind? Why aren't you already there? And so when I appreciate differences, it frees me up when I speak the expectations, when I speak the communication, to not get frustrated when they actually meet the expectation. I think about this. I think this was a great example, I thought. God asks for our love. Does that devalue it to him when we love him? He had to ask us to love. In fact, in 1 John it says we love him because he first loved us. And Jesus, we just read that passage in Matthew, right? That said, love God. He's always having to tell us, love God, love God. He's having to communicate this expectation. When we meet it, when in our earthly, fleshly, human, we try and we make some moment where we have loved God, does he say, yeah, I had to ask you? And so I think, again, using God and the pattern of how he treats us really helps us to be able to address these expectations well.
Looking at time, we're going to take the last point and move it into next week, which we're going to be talking about expectations this week. And next we're going to talk about disappointments. We have them. How do we deal with disappointments? A lot of our relationships are based on how we deal with when expectations are not met. And we're going to talk about that next week. I want to end with this though, because we've talked about one side of communication, the sharing. But there is a second part just as important as the sharing and communicating. It is receiving, right? Being able to receive and being in an open place to hear from the person around you, your spouse, your friend, to hear what their needs are. If you remember our series, we did a series, last series was called Love Does. You guys remember that series? And the very basis of that whole series was this. What is the definition of love? Love propels me outside of my comfort zones, outside of my wants and desires, and propels me past my own understanding into other people's needs. That's what love does. Love does this. It propels me past my wants, my desires, my understandings, and my comfort zones into the other person's needs. That is what true love looks like. And communication in our relationships has to be built on the foundation of love, that I am eager to hear what's going on in your life. I want to meet your needs. And when I don't, I am not loving my wife. I can say I love her. I can write notes about love. I can do everything you can see tangibly about love. But love at its core. Because what did Jesus say? I loved you and I went and I acted on it. I died. I moved. My love propelled me out of heaven onto the earth and took on a form of a man and became obedient to death, even the death of the cross, became a slave and died a horrible death. What propelled him there? His love for you and me. That did it. And so when we say, I love you, Those words are shallow, if not empty, if they don't propel us to act. And not for our own self. And look, man, this message has been very, stepping on my own toes. But love propels me past my own wants, my own understandings. I mean, it says, she says something, that is so far, I don't understand why you feel that way. And the tendency I have when I don't understand it, it's like it doesn't matter. If I don't understand it, I don't think it valuable, then in my life, sometimes I just devalue it altogether. Men, are you ever like that? If I don't understand it, or men, are you ever like that, where I don't understand it, so it's not valuable. But love propels me past myself to meet the needs of the people around me. My spouse, my friends, our community. It'll ask us out of our comfort zones. It'll ask us to move beyond what we understand and how we can wrap our minds around. But love propels us. And so we talk about marriage and we talk about expectations. We're going to have unmet expectations. And it's going to cause disappointment in our life. And next week, come back. Because we're going to talk about how to deal with unmet expectations and disappointment.
And I think to close would be, as we're about ready to pray and go into a time of reflection, that there needs to be in all of our relationships permission to have it be a place of grace. Because that's what God does with me. He communicates over and over again to me, and he gives grace when I don't meet it. He'll say something in my time alone with him. Then he'll speak it in the words of a friend later. And then the following week, I'll have it said on Sunday where finally I'm like, I get it! It's not always one and done with our expectations and communicating. But God sets up a place of grace in our relationship with him. And the least we can do is set up that kind of grace in our relating with the imperfect people around us. If you'll go ahead and close your eyes and bow your heads.